4 spine-chilling night shift tales. Terrifying realities of sinister forces uncovered at work. The hospital in West Willow sings a melody of life during the day, but when the sun sinks, it transforms into a cold tomb, echoing and emptier than a ghost town. Claire, a 32-year-old nurse with heavy eyes, steps into that darkness each night, her heart racing with anxiety. Long shifts and dwindling staff weigh down her shoulders like a heavy shroud. As the lights flicker, she feels the shadows creep, her resolve tested by a familiar chill. "Stay sharp, Claire," she tells herself, but each murmur of the wind outside paints a scene too vivid to ignore. The patients trusted the pediatrician, Dr. Collins, the reassuring figure with a smile too wide. But lately, Claire has felt a tightening in her chest every time he walks past, the memories of frightened children lingering like smoke. Reflections of a secret tainting the air. One fateful night, a little girl arrives wide-eyed and trembling. She stares into Claire's heart, not uttering a word, but her quivering lips whisper of a hungry man lurking in the trees. Claire feels her stomach drop. "Just a trauma reaction," she mutters, but deep down, unease unfurls. The lights hum a little louder. Doors crack open uninvited and objects tumble, a riddle that makes the walls pulse with uncertainty. Then the phone lines go dead, a storm brews, and Claire's world spirals into chaos. The silence becomes thick, a choking haze that makes every creak and sigh sound like whispers in a forgotten language. "We're not alone," Derek, her only colleague, whispers, and she can see his hands tremble, betraying the facade of calm. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As they huddle in the flickering light, shadows dance along the walls, creeping closer with each synchronized heartbeat. Patients begin to vanish, the calm lullabies morphing into wails that bounce through the sterile corridors. Panic clawed at Claire's chest. "Derek," she shouted, voice piercing through the ominous silence. But the shadows engulfed him, his screams splintering the atmosphere, splattering her heart against the walls. Claire stands frozen, her breath caught in her throat, feeling the world tumble around the edges of her mind. Could the hungry man be real? Could Dr. Collins be more than the comforting figure they all adored? With each revelation sharpening her fears, she resolves to dive into the hospital's sinister history. Dr. Collins and the folklore devouring the town connect like tendrils of fog, intertwining trust with betrayal, the very essence of fear pulsating through the glass walls of her precarious reality. Claire stares into the abyss of night, heart racing faster than ever. Darkness looms, and shadows thicken, the hospital standing silent and foreboding, ready to weave her into its haunting fabric. Time slipping through her fingers, the hungry man waits just beyond her reach. Would she uncover the truth before it turned into her own nightmare? Would the very people she trusted reveal their darkest secrets? As the darkness envelopes her tighter, Claire grips the edge of reality, caught between the past and the approaching horror. The chilling silence arrives, heavy and oppressive, falling like a shroud over her world. And as she turns, ready to confront whatever terror waits in the shadows, the door swings wide, and fear lingers, a predator lying in wait. The air grew thick as Claire's heart raced, pounding against her ribs like a caged animal desperate to escape. The door swayed slowly, its hinges creaking, and in that moment, the darkness seemed to pulse around her, viscous and unnerving. Shadows flickered, contorting into forms without definition, and a familiar whisper curled its way through the room, winding around her like smoke. Derek's voice, silenced too soon. She groped for the light switch, fingers trembling, but the flickering bulb above merely stuttered, casting erratic shadows that danced mockingly in her peripheral vision. "Derek," she called, hearing her own voice falter, echoing against the wall before being swallowed by the corridor's suffocating silence. Her gut twisted, and unease dripped off her like sweat. Just then, a low wail erupted from the hall, a sound so foreign yet hauntingly familiar that it froze her in place. Claire pushed forward, the urge to find the source of the sound clawing at her insides. She stepped into the corridor, each footfall muted by the confusion of noise, a child's whimper, breaking glass, and a distant thumping that echoed down the hallway. She rounded the corner, expecting the worst, but found herself standing before the pediatric ward. The door was ajar, as if inviting her confession of primal fear. Claire peered inside. The room was a chaos of yo-yo toys scattered on the floor, medical charts flapping eerily, and crayons half-dipped in a pool of blue liquid. But the sight that seized her breath was a single bed, netting flared around it, with the girl from earlier sitting upright, staring at the wall, as if watching something only she could see. "Claire," the girl murmured, her voice barely a whisper, hauntingly vacant. "He-s here." She approached slowly, dread coiling tighter with each step. "Who-s here?" Claire's voice trembled, barely escaping her cracked lips. A sudden chill wrapped around her, stirring the air. It was a familiar sensation, fear fused with dread suffused with sorrow. "The hungry man. He walks the halls at night. He has no face, just shadows," the girl replied, her eyes glassy and seen through, as if she were a vessel of terror. "He wants to take me, he wants you." An icy shiver traveled down Claire's spine as realization crashed over her. This wasn't just folklore, not just a child's frightened imagination, it was real, made flesh by the darkness that hung heavily in the air, taunting her sanity. "Stay here," Claire urged, backpedaling toward the door, ready to spring to safety, but a sudden crash erupted from behind her, and her heart jolted into her throat. The lights flickered and dimmed, plunging her momentarily into darkness. When they returned, the ward seemed to shift. The one misaligned bed was now empty. The girl had vanished, but the haunting echo of her presence lingered, fear inked on the walls. "Derek," Claire turned, whispering into the hallway, panic clawing at her. But only silence answered. She stumbled back, the shadows gliding against her skin, threatening to unravel her very essence. With adrenaline flooding her veins, Claire plunged into the dark, weaving through the endless halls that twisted and turned back on themselves. She needed to find Derek, but the shadows held her captive, wrapping around her mind and blurring her path. As the barrier between reality and nightmare thinned, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a figure standing at the end of the hall. Too tall, too still. Claire's breath quickened. "The hungry man?" Claire, the figure called, and it was not Derek's voice but something more sinister, a mere echo of familiarity masked in dark. The hairs on her neck stood up. She wanted to turn and run, but a sickening pull bound her in place. The figure stepped forward, a face emerging from darkness, and as it neared, she froze. What awaited her on the other side? Would she run, hide, or confront the truth staring right back at her? In that heartbeat of hesitation, dread pooled in her gut. And the question loomed hungrily: was she ready to face the figure that had devoured not only Derek, but the sanity she battled to keep? Claire's skin prickled as the shadows shifted, coalescing around the figure that slinked forward. It was cloaked in darkness, and as it approached, details began to materialize: matted hair, gaunt cheeks, and eyes that refracted the dim light like shards of broken glass. Her breath hitched. "Why are you here?" Claire managed to whisper, but the words felt heavy, trapped in a throat constricted by fear. "Why are you here?" The figure echoed, its voice both Derek's and something far more sinister. It moved closer, the air souring around it, a smell like decayed leaves and rust. "You shouldn't have returned," panic clawed at Claire. She turned, preparing to flee down the labyrinth of hallways, but the oppressive weight of the darkness pressed in on her. Her legs felt heavy, glued to the floor. "Let me go," she screamed, wrestling against the void that sought to consume her. "Derek is lost," the figure whispered, its voice echoing like a wet echo in a cavern. "And so are you." Something sharp flared in her chest, a deep-rooted agony at the thought of Derek lost. It intensified, a stab of regret mixed with fear. She couldn't let this creature hold her hostage. With all her strength, she broke free, sprinting past the figure, her footsteps pounding in frantic rhythm against the cold, hard floor. She didn't look back, pushing herself deeper into the corridor, which twisted like a serpent. It was unfamiliar yet eerily intimate, like memories she wished to forget. Shadows chased her, malevolent whispers taunting her, brushing tantalizingly close to her skin. Then, Claire skidded to a stop, eyes wide. The hallway opened like the maw of a beast, lined with hospital doors that flickered with the weak light. Most were slightly ajar, each one a doorway to unknown horrors. She could feel a pull from one door, drawn by an unseen force. Against her better judgment, Claire drifted toward it as if it were calling her name. The door creaked open with agonizing slowness, revealing a dark, bare room furnished only with a flimsy cot and a skeletal chair. Heart pounding, she stepped inside, dread balled in her throat. The door slammed shut behind her with a thunderous echo, and then there was silence, heavy, suffocating silence. A shadow swept across the far wall, flickering and pulsing. Claire, the voice, slithered through the room, wrapping around her like a serpent, leaving her breathless. It was his voice. Derek S. Derek. She called out, desperation bursting forth, but only shadows answered her. They writhed, coiling toward her like sentient smoke. Help me. Claire, it was clear now, his voice pleading through the gloom, aching with the weight of loss and longing. The walls vibrated with his words, and Claire could feel the darkness thicken around her, suffocating and raw. Where are you? She cried, but her voice echoed hollowly, drowned under the pulse of the shadows. Find me. Derek's voice faltered, becoming a whisper that mingled with the rustling darkness. In those final moments, a horrific realization crashed over her. This wasn't a simple search for Derek. She was being tested, pulled into a game of survival, one that pitted her against a hungry force that thrived on despair. Just as a glimmer of hope sparked, a cold hand grasped her shoulder. She spun around, her heart pounding so violently she feared it would burst. Time to face the truth. The featureless face loomed, the shadows swirling and twisting around it, and Claire's breath caught as the figure lunged, intent on dragging her into the depths of the unknown. Claire, the name reverberated like thunder as darkness claimed her, and a shriek pierced the air, one that might have been her own. What awaited her in this chilling abyss? Would she discover the grim fate of Derek, or would she become another lost soul wandering the halls? The darkness closed in around her, and the question lingered, gnawing at her sanity. Could she escape this nightmare, or was she forever bound to the hungry shadows? The darkness swirled, a furious tempest that echoed Claire's scream. She felt the cold grasp of the figure tighten around her, yet deep inside, a flicker of defiance ignited. With every ounce of strength, she wrestled away from the frigid grip, lunging back towards the door with a primal instinct to survive. Let me out, she cried, pounding her fists against the door. The echoes of her desperation reverberated through the empty room, a haunting symphony of fear and pain. But the door was solid, refusing to budge, mocking her. Help me. Derek's voice was a distant whisper now, fading behind layers of darkness. Each pulse made Claire's heart thrum with terror. She turned her gaze toward the shadows dancing at the edges, their forms shifting like a silent tide, wrapping around her like an embrace of decay. In a moment of stillness, she heard it, a distant creaking, like old bones settling. A chill swept through the room as she pivoted, straining to catch a glimpse of something lurking beyond the shadows. The air thickened, almost alive, pushing against her, drawing closer, eager to consume her. With a gut-wrenching resolve, Claire pressed forward into the pulsating shadows, hoping that she might find a way back to Derek. But the flickers of his presence danced away as she reached for them, slipping through her fingers like smoke. Stay with me, she screamed, spinning around, desperation wrapping her tightly. The figure hovered in the periphery, morphing, whispering her name as if coaxing her into despair. Find the truth or lose everything. The words twisted, intermingling around her like a coarse thread, binding her to her fate. Claire's pulse raced, the thought of losing Derek fueling her fear. I want to let you take me, she shouted defiantly, eyes scanning every corner for a clue, something to navigate this nightmarish maze. She stumbled upon a fragment of light breaking through the gloom, just a sliver, but enough to catch her breath. Instinctively, she reached toward it, thoughts of Derek driving her deeper into the shadows, surrendering to the unseen force that pulled at her heart. The closer she got, the louder the whispers became. They were drowning out her thoughts, clawing at her sanity. Suddenly, The shadows shrieked, a cacophony of anguish that made her stagger. Claire forced her eyes shut, pushing through the sound, searching for the light that shimmered just out of reach. Claire, it was Derek's voice again, clearer this time, stronger. You have to wake up. She plunged into the light, the sensation jolting her with urgency. But as she broke through, it enveloped her instead. Confusion swirled in her chest. The room spun, reality blurring into a fevered dreamscape. When she opened her eyes, she was met with an entirely different scene. She was in a different room. Familiar. The smell of antiseptic invaded her nostrils. Claire bolted upright, breathing heavily. Where was she? A chill raised the hairs on her neck. The hospital? How could that be? A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision, and she turned, breath hitching again. The first echoing question returned, twisting her insides. Why are you here? And there he was again, Derek, or something that had once been him, lingering near the doorway, staring blankly, skin pallid, eyes hollow. Fear gripped her. Derek? Help me, he rasped, voice ghostly, echoing the same pleading from before. The truth hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating in its weight. She took a cautious step forward. Tell me where you are. But he only shook his head, a slow, deliberate movement that sent a shiver down her spine. A sudden clarity swept over her. The shadows had not left. They were encroaching again, a dark tide reclaiming what it had lost. A rush of horror flooded her senses. What truth was she being forced to uncover? And what would it cost her? Another shadow flared in the room, coalescing into twisted forms around Derek. She couldn't breathe, adrenaline surged, and panic spiraled. Was the darkness coming for them both? Claire, as his voice faded beneath the growing darkness, one final question echoed in her mind. Could she trust the truth, or would it lead her further into a nightmare? Meanwhile, outside the corridor, an insistent tapping echoed, a new sound that drew Claire's attention. What else lingered just out of sight, waiting for her next move? The tapping grew louder, a rhythmic drumming that clawed at Claire's fraying nerves. It came from the hallway, faint but close, like something was trying to break through the barrier of darkness enveloping her. Derek? She called, her voice trembling. He didn't answer. His hollow gaze remained fixed on the encroaching shadows, a silent witness to her spiraling dread. With a quick glance back at him, she realized he was fading. What remained was a whisper of the boy she loved, as though he were a fading photograph, colors bleeding into a blur of sorrow. Stay with me, she shouted, desperation pulling her deeper into the unknown. The shadows writhed at her feet, a living thing, curling like hungry vines reaching for sunlight. She had to move. With every ounce of courage, Claire stumbled toward the door, the tapping outside growing louder, almost urgent, as though whoever or whatever was causing it sensed her plight. Help me, Claire. Derek's voice echoed, wavering, but she refused to look back. The door loomed ahead, still closed, but now a sliver of hope flickered within her. She charged forward, pursing her lips, ready to slam her weight against the wood. But just as she reached for the doorknob, the tapping stopped. Silence swallowed the room. The air turned thick and smothering. Her heart thudded violently against her rib cage. Don't. Derek's whisper cut through the quiet, sharp as glass. His eyes reflected a terror she could hardly bear, urging her to retreat. It's worse out there. But she had to know. I can't stay here. I have to find you. With a swell of resolve, she grasped the doorknob and twisted hard. It opened with a reluctant groan, revealing the dim corridor beyond. The hallway was an endless stretch, lined with flickering fluorescent lights that cast eerie shadows. No sign of life, yet the oppressive weight of unseen eyes bore down on her. She felt like a moth trapped in a web, drawn from the safety of the light. Suddenly, a loud crash resonated behind her, snapping Claire's attention back. The shadow around Derek lurched forward, a swirling mass of malice. Run, before it takes me, he cried, desperation lacing his voice. Turning back to the hallway, panic surged like ice through her veins. The walls seemed to close in, narrowing her path as dark shapes flickered at the edges of her vision. She sprinted into the corridor, breath hitching, every step echoing like a thunderclap in her ears. Multiple doors lined the walls, some ajar, others sealed tight. The tug of something dark in the air whispered promises of despair as she dashed past. Derek's warning repeated in her mind. What could be worse than this? What stalked the halls and waited for her stumble? Ahead, she spotted an exit sign glowing faintly, casting a beacon of hope in the oppressive gloom. Taking aim, she rushed forward. But with each step, a new sound rang out, a rush of whispers rising in a crescendo, chanting her name, taunting her resolve. Claire, come back, she hesitated briefly, caught in the swirling tide of echoes that beckoned her toward a truth she wasn't ready to confront. No, she shouted, pushing through the fear. I won't let you take me. As she reached for the handle of the exit door, a figure stepped into her path, blocking the light behind it. The darkness solidified, revealing a grotesque form with hollow eyes riveted on her. You shouldn't have come here, it hissed, cold and unyielding. Claire's heart raced as the entity lunged, and in that fleeting moment, she faced a choice: step into the light and confront the horrors outside, or face the darkness that clutched her heart. With no time left for doubt, she lunged forward, heart pounding in her ears. The room exploded into chaos as shadows swallowed her whole, and darkness reigned once more. What awaited her on the other side? All hope hung by a thread as she plunged into the void, desperate for answers or escape. Claire fell through the darkness, her body weightless for eternity, until a hard thud turned her world upside down. She hit the ground, cold, unyielding concrete. Gasping, she scrambled to her feet, blinking against the darkness that surrounded her like a shroud. Where am I? The air crunched with a static energy, and Claire's heart thrummed in her chest, urging her to run, to hide. She glanced around, desperate for something familiar, something to hold on to. All that greeted her were the empty walls of an eerie maintenance room, littered with malfunctioning equipment that emitted low, ominous hums. Derek? She croaked, fear tightening her throat. No answer. A flicker of light caught her eye. Turning slowly, she followed the glow to an old fluorescent bulb swinging from the ceiling. Its sputtering cast ghostly shadows that danced and flickered like spirits lost in despair. Before she could take a step, she heard a rustling, like something large shifting in darkness. Panic gripped her, the ice in her veins threatening to stop her heart. She backed away, but her foot snagged on a stray wire, sending her crashing against a workbench. Tools clattered and launched into the air, a cacophony of sound that dissolved into silence as quickly as it began. Who's there? She yelled, voice shaking. A soft, horrible chuckle slithered through the shadows. You cannot escape, Claire. The voice was sultry yet sinister, echoing in a way that warped the sound. It sent chills racing down her spine. With renewed dread igniting her senses, Claire lunged towards the door she had come through, but it had vanished, leaving only a blank wall. It should still be there. Her breath quickened, hands trembling as she pressed against the cold concrete in disbelief. Let me out, she screamed. Her voice hit the thick air around her, the echoes dancing mockingly. Then she felt it. The presence heavy, suffocating. She whirled around, desperate eyes scanning the darkness. Suddenly, one of the shadows stepped into the light. It was the same figure that had blocked her escape earlier, though now mottled with the filth of another world, a twisted distortion of haunting eyes and jagged teeth, grinning wider than could ever be humanly possible. You belong to me now, it hissed, advancing with a speed that made her blood run cold. In a burst of instinct, Claire bolted, adrenaline propelling her forward. She didn't look back, but every instinct screamed to run faster. The shadows screamed with her, thickening the air with terror. To her left, doors rose of them. She flung one open, diving inside as the figure lunged again, its outstretched hands grasping for her. The heavy door slammed shut behind her, plunging her into near-complete darkness. Panting, Claire felt the cold, damp ground beneath her. Heart racing, she reached out to touch the walls. Rough concrete, damp and emanating decay. The air tasted stale, her skin prickled as if being watched. Derek, please, where are you? She whispered, sobs fighting their way up her throat. She could hear the creature outside, its wheezing breaths a reminder of her peril. Time ticked away, every second felt like an eternity. Then a shatter of glass reverberated through the walls, a desperate sound, dragging her attention. Was it a window? She felt around and found a jagged edge. Summoning courage, Claire pulled herself upright. Hand trembling, she pressed against the wall, and made her way toward the sound, all hope riding on the chance of freedom. But as she stepped closer, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in glass shards scattered across the ground. The girl staring back at her was not the same fierce warrior she felt inside. She looked frail, pale, and utterly terrified. And then, the whispers returned, growing louder, insistent. "Join us." Claire, before she could recoil, the door she had entered through swung open with a horrifying creak. The shadow crept in, its grin widening. "Time to come home," it breathed, darkness spilling in behind it. Claire froze, heart hammering in her chest, realizing she was out of options. Was there anywhere left to run? As the shadow lunged for her, Claire's world narrowed, and every instinct screamed for her to fight. But in this battle of light and shadow, who would triumph? A scream caught in her throat, and somehow, she felt it, a flicker of hope. Just beyond the dark, the truth awaited her. The shadow lunged, and Claire's instincts kicked in. She shoved against the wall, using the jagged edge of the glass to cut through the surreal horror. She caught the creature's gaze, its eyes like bottomless pits, filled with a darkness that threatened to swallow her whole. Before she could fully form a plan, the air around her thickened, as if the walls themselves were closing in. "Join us," the whispers wrapped around her like vines, tightening their grip. She could almost feel cold fingers brushing against her skin. "Get away from me." She swung the shard of glass wildly, praying to hit something, anything that might halt the impending doom. The shadow hesitated, a flicker of surprise darting across its distorted face. Claire seized the moment. She bolted past it, feeling the air shift behind her as it spun around. Every breath was a ragged gasp, every heartbeat thundering like a war drum. She raced through the dimly lit corridor, desperately searching for a place to hide. The noise of the thing behind her, its movements, filled the fragmented silence. The glowing fixture above flickered, illuminating a narrow staircase that spiraled downward. Without thinking, she dove down, hoping it would lead her away from the creature's malevolent grasp. The stairs creaked under her weight, a haunting melody of despair as she descended into the unknown. Each step felt like an eternity, her legs burning, lungs aching for air. At the bottom, she stumbled into a long, dark hall. Faint echoes whispered her name, curling around her ears like smoke. Just ahead, a sliver of light beckoned her like a lighthouse in a storm. It could be her salvation or another trap. Ignoring the wave of terror holding her back, Claire reached out for the light, rushing toward it. She burst through a weathered door, entering a room filled with strange machinery. Screens flickered to life, spewing distorted images that danced alongside her fears, faces, places, lost memories. One screen caught her eye, Derek's familiar face, eyes wide with terror, pleading for help. "Derek!" Claire cried, reaching for the screen, but the image warped and twisted, displaced by shadows. The room shook, a dull reverberation like thunder, sending her spiraling into chaos. "Leave him." The shadow's voice echoed around her, saturated with rage. "He is mine." "No, no," Claire screamed, falling to her knees. The screens dimmed, their soft glow fading as dark tendrils slithered across her vision, threatening to engulf her. She crawled backward, heart racing as the air grew heavy. Every part of her screamed to flee, but she couldn't leave Derek, couldn't abandon someone else to the dark. "I'll save you, Derek," she choked, as a wall of darkness loomed closer. The moment of resolve ignited within her like wildfire. She refused to be a prisoner, a puppet in this nightmare. It was time to fight back. With a fierce shout, Claire rose, brandishing the shard of glass. "You want to take us? We're stronger than you." She lunged at the nearest screen, smashing it with all her strength. The image shattered into shards, releasing a brilliant light alongside a shriek that cut through the air like a knife. The shadow hesitated, recoiling as the light pulsed against it. Determined, she struck again. The other screens cascaded into brilliance, shattering darkness and pushing the figure back. For a moment, the room was bathed in clarity, the cold darkness retreating. But the creature was not finished. "You think you can escape?" It hissed, reforming from the shadows, its grin wider than ever. The air buzzed with chaos, and a surge of despair filled Claire as the realization dawned on her. She had merely stirred the beast. Suddenly, the floor beneath her began to dissolve into a void a whirlwind of energy threatening to pull her into its depths. Claire had to act fast. "Derek!" she shouted, towards the dissolving shadows. She couldn't leave him. But somewhere deep in the recesses of the void, a chilling laugh began to echo again, gathering power, growing stronger, and it sounded almost familiar. Claire's heart sank. Who had she truly awakened? The walls trembled around her, and she felt the pull of inevitability creeping at her heels. She had to make a choice, confront the truth and try again, or be lost to the darkness forever. The winding shadows around her beckoned, waiting for her next move. As Claire glanced towards the encroaching storm of darkness, dread coiled tightly in her stomach. Could she face the truth and return for Derek? Or would the darkness claim them both? The void churned beneath Claire, a swirling abyss of despair. She could feel its hunger, a cold, clammy grip pulling at her as every instinct screamed at her to flee. But Derek's face flashed in her mind, a memory caught in the web of fear. She couldn't abandon him. Not now. Fight back, she shouted into the darkness, her voice strained and broken. "I won't let you win." The shadows seemed to ripple in response, as if her defiance was a jolt of electricity against the encroaching darkness. With renewed determination, she thrust the glass shard into the ground, anchoring herself. She could feel the pulse of the walls around her, beating like a heart, a living entity wrapped in misery and dread. There was a power here. She could sense it, a knot of energy lying deep within the structure, waiting for her to unleash it. "Come on," she whispered, almost as if willing the light back into existence. The shadows recoiled, swirling at the edges of her vision but drawing closer, their whispers morphing into a dissonant chorus of rage and mockery. The laughter echoed familiar, yet twisted, as if it were part of something she once knew. Her heart raced, uncertainty gnawing at her as panic threatened to swallow her whole. With one last desperate swing, she shattered the last shimmering screen, releasing a burst of radiant energy that ripped through the despair, illuminating the room momentarily. The cacophony reached a deafening crescendo, and then silence. Claire clutched her head, the absence of sound eerily unsettling. The pull of the void lessened, but she could still feel the shadow's presence lurking just beyond the edge of light. Slowly, she stood, trembling. "Where are you, Derek?" she called softly, afraid that too loud a voice might wake the darkness. A faint noise came from behind her, a scraping sound, like nails against stone. Claire turned sharply. The shadows around her quivered, coiling as they faded into a corner of the room. Her heart dropped as she strained against her growing anxiety. "Is that you?" Claire, the weak, familiar voice was barely audible, but it froze her in place. "Derek." She shuffled towards the sound, the darkness retreating as if recognizing her intent. The wall molded as she approached, revealing a figure hunched, gray, and battered by torment. "Get away, it's too late," he rasped, his face ghostly pale, eyes sunken. "What have they done to you?" Claire stepped closer, eyes scanning his figure desperately. The tendrils of darkness seemed to gather again, lapping at their edges as if ready to consume them both. The creature's laughter returned, echoing from the walls. "You should have left him. He belongs to us now." "No, he is not yours," Claire shouted, cold fury igniting within her. She gripped the shard tightly, feeling a rush of strength flow through her. Maybe she was stronger than the shadows wanted her to believe. She had a choice: she could save him or be consumed by despair. But the shadows surged forward, a violent tide that swept across the floor, creeping closer with every heartbeat. Claire's resolve began to waver. Don't give in," Derek hissed, flailing weakly against the darkness coiling around his ankles. She froze, staring at him in disbelief. "You can fight it." Suddenly, with an earth-shattering roar, the darkness twisted around Derek, expanding and contracting as it captured him in its clutches. "No." The shadows tugged him deeper, shifting and writhing with malicious glee. Claire's breath hitched. "No." With everything inside her screaming, she hurled the glass shard, the only weapon she had left against an unimaginable force. It sailed through the air, slicing the darkness and illuminating the shadowed tendrils. Light erupted around them, pulsing fiercely, almost blinding. The shadow screamed, a piercing wail that fractured the air before it fell into an eerie silence. But the darkness did not retreat entirely. It quivered, a menacing presence still lingering, its laughter echoing faintly. "Run!" Derek yelled, straining against his invisible bonds, the shadows flickering just behind him. Claire stumbled back, heart racing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Suddenly, a thought struck her like lightning. What if the true horror lay not in the shadow itself, but who or what controlled it? Taking Derek's hands in hers, she forced him to meet her gaze, an ember of hope igniting between them. "We need to find the source, Derek. Together, we can." But before she could finish, the ground beneath her quaked violently, the shadows spiraling into a cyclone. The room cracked, fissures splitting the very fabric of the walls. With a cry, they were both swallowed by the darkness, and the laughter resonated once more, deeper, more menacing than before. Would they find the heart of the shadow, or would they be lost in its depths forever? The vortex wrapped around Claire and Derek, claws of shadow pulling at their bodies, tearing at their minds. Claire's scream echoed in a whirlpool of sound, mingling with the sinister laughter that enveloped them. Was this what it felt like to drown? She thought, her lungs tightening as the dark air stifled her cries. She reached for Derek, but the grasp of the shadows was relentless, yanking him away, an invisible noose tightening around their collective hope. "Fight it! Hold on to me," she pleaded, desperation clawing at her throat. He was slipping. She could see it in his eyes of vacancy where clarity once flickered. The shadows spoke to him, whispering dark promises, sowing seeds of despair. "Derek, no? You're stronger than this," Claire shouted, forcing herself forward despite the yearning darkness. With every step, she felt her strength waning, the shadows screaming in victory as they shifted and coiled like serpents around her ankles. She struggled to pull him back, but the tendrils were thick, alive with malignant intent. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted, slicing through the blackness. Claire's heart jolted as she instinctively shielded her eyes. Within that brief moment of illumination, she caught a glimpse of Derek, the faint silhouette of hope flickering like a broken candle. "The source, the heart," Claire gasped, realization striking her like fresh ice water. It was the very essence that commanded the void. With a surge of adrenaline, she focused all her energies inward, grounding herself in a familiar reality, not just Derek's face, but the warmth of their shared laughter, the moments that tethered them to life and love. "Together," she screamed, lifting her hands, palms open to the fraying curtain of darkness. The shards of glass still glowed on the floor, remnants of her earlier triumph. She called upon it, leveraging its radiance against the thick shadows. Light pulsed through her fingers, chasing the encroaching gloom back momentarily. But the shadows retaliated like wild flames, furious and desperate. They wrapped tighter around her waist, a chorus of voices now rising in a bizarre, cacophonous chant. "Leave, Claire. We take him. He is ours. Get away from him." She yanked at the tendrils binding Derek, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath the cold grasp of despair. He was there, somewhere beneath the surface, and he was still fighting. But just as she began to feel the echoes of victory, the darkness reshaped itself, roaring back in waves. The shadows swelled, shifting into a monstrous form that towered over them, feeding on fear and despair. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly brightness, a twisted reflection of everything Claire held dear. "Given. He is lost, Claire." "No," Claire shouted, her breath hitching as she leaned into Derek. "I want to lose you." With every ounce of strength she could muster, she pressed against the shadows, pulling Derek with her. The ground trembled, but that small ember of hope inside her flickered brighter. She could feel it guarded by love. They might push back against the inevitability that sought to consume them. Yet, as the darkness twisted and screamed, Claire felt a sharp jolt of energy shooting through her. It sprawled across her chest, an urge to run, to abandon what she sought to save. A violent surge pushed against her gut, every whisper growing louder and more forceful. With a sudden twist, the shadows lurched and pulled her sideways. The chasm beside her opened wider, a beckoning maw of despair. The shadow creature, omnipotent and relentless, extended a tendril of darkness towards her heart. "Join us, Claire. Forever." Claire could feel the fear choke her breath. Would surrender shatter her forever? Her hands trembled, caught in an alluring pull, the very essence of her existence threatening to fade. Derek. The scream tumbled through her lips, a desperate plea crashing against the infinite pit. But the shadows were hungry, and they roared with triumph. What was left of her will began to fray, threads of reality unraveling as the creature leaned closer with its gaping. Dark Maul. Would they succumb to its tempting darkness? Or was there a hidden blade waiting to sever their bond? And just as all appeared lost, a spark of light surged upward from the shattered shards at her feet, the moment suspended between life and death. Hope and despair. What would happen when the darkness met this unexpected defiance? The light surged like a shockwave, shattering the darkness that surrounded Claire and Derek. It wrapped around them, connecting their hearts in a fierce, glowing embrace. The shadow recoiled, its twisted features contorting in an expression of anger it had never shown before. No, it roared, the sound shaking the room, vibrating through their bones. The tendrils that held Derek began to loosen, shrinking back from the light like vampires retreating from the sun. Claire. Derek gasped, his voice breaking through the haze of shadow. He was free. With a swift motion, she lunged for him, pulling him closer as the radiant light pulsed with renewed power. Together, Claire whispered, their fingers intertwining, that deep connection sealing their resolve. Every ounce of fear that had clouded her disappeared, replaced with something stronger: determination. We need to confront it. Stand firm. The darkness shrieked, swirling wildly, trying to reclaim what it had lost. Shadows flicked like flames, darting toward them, but Claire and Derek stood side by side, surrounded by an unyielding barrier of light. In one fierce motion, they lifted their connected hands toward the creature, channeling the warmth they felt for each other. Every smile, every tear, every moment shared surged through their veins. You don't own us, Claire bellowed, her voice full of conviction, echoing through the cavernous horrors around them. The light exploded from their clasped hands, flooding the space with brilliance that cut through the tormenting darkness. The shadow writhed, screaming as it was consumed in its own reaction. Tendrils of pitch-black vapor disintegrated in the dazzling brightness, chaos igniting as the oppressive fear unraveled around them. Get out! Get out! The creature screamed, claws flailing, desperately trying to keep hold of its doomed existence. The air crackled and sparked, swirling around them like a storm of salvation. Claire felt a surge of strength coursing through her. Keep going, Derek. Focus on each other. The warmth of their love coiled in her chest, fueling their defiance, feeding the light that surged through them like molten gold. The shadows lashed out one last time, trying to claw back what it could, but they shot forward. With one final push, Claire and Derek hurled the light towards the heart of the monstrous shadow. It struck with a force that made the ground tremble, a radiant explosion that filled the room with piercing light. The darkness shrieked, a sound so shrill it reverberated in Claire's bones, and then it shattered, exploding into 1,000 wisps of black smoke. The terror that once gripped her heart dissipated into the air, leaving only the remnants of fear swirling around them like fading memories. Claire blinked, trying to catch her breath, adrenaline still surging through her veins. Was it truly over? As the light began to fade, the world around them shifted. The stark, cold room melted away, replaced by the familiar calming hues of the pediatric ward. The two stood in the middle of the room, untouched by the darkness, basking in the gentle warmth of dawn light streaming through the window. What just happened? Derek murmured, still dazed, searching her eyes for answers. I think we faced it together, Claire whispered, a smile breaking through the clouded remnants of fear. It's gone. For now. But with their victory, a twinge of responsibility settled over Claire. They had learned the darkness had taken many before, yet they had endured and broken free. We need to help the others. We can't let this happen to anyone else, she stated, a resolute fire igniting in her chest. Then we will, Derek replied, meeting her gaze. Together. The doors swung open, and nurses poured in, their faces a mix of confusion and relief. The hospital was waking up, and with it, hope returned. As dawn broke outside, shadows receded, revealing a clear path ahead. Claire and Derek stood together, hands intertwined, knowing they would face whatever came next together. But before that, Claire took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the moment wash over her. They didn't just fight shadows. They faced the darkness within and emerged stronger. As they stepped back into the world, the sun filtered through the windows, casting a hopeful glow on the once haunted halls of West Willow Hospital. This was their moment. And as the echoes of past horrors faded, a new chapter awaited. If you love this conclusion, you need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about the ending. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion. Only true fans will understand the importance of showing your support through these actions.